What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to another deep dive analysis. Today we're going to be going over M80, the Kings of Swiss, and that fall in round one of the single elimination. And it's going to be a great deep dive analysis today. And I can't wait to see overall how M80 performed. It's a team that I haven't analyzed just yet as a coach. And I can't wait to see overall how strong they are as a team when they're playing with confidence and to see what really does fall off in the quarterfinals. They've made every single quarterfinal and lost to a separate team in every single quarterfinal. They lost to Shopify, OG, G2, and then who am I blanking on? And then Cloud9, and then one more team. They lost to one more team in quarters. I'm blanking on their names right now. Anyway, let's get started. So let's get started analyzing M80 and see overall how well they perform. And welcome, Fizzy. Welcome to the stream. How you doing? But all right, let's see how this match starts off. So this is going to be Game 5, Round 2 is Swiss, G2 versus M80. And M80 do come out with a win in this at this point. But let's see what happened. What is M80's strengths and weaknesses? So we can see right off the bat, we can see that there is an emphasis between support for making sure there's always a support player for M80. I think it'll be a little bit easier to see right off the bat here from maybe a more outward angle. We can see that there's always someone on the ball, and then we can see that there is an emphasis of having always somebody supporting the person on the ball. But for me, the biggest issue I'm noticing right off the bat is a structure issue. Right now, with the way M80 are positioning and playing, where it's looking very similar to the very old style of Rocket League, one that was popularized by the Dynasty Dignitas, and then that was still done by Vitality in season 7 and 8, or 8, season 7 and season 8, and where instead of having a structure that allows the team to cover a lot more of the field, we see a structure that tends to have a person permanently available for a pass and somebody permanently available for a 50. And for those of you who may not have analyzed high level Rocket League before, Rocket League teams don't play like this anymore. And there's a very important reason why. It's a reason why, like when I say Dynasty Dignitas, that was a long time ago. Season 7 and Season 8 Vitality, that was also a very long time ago. And there's a few major reasons why that Rocket League players and teams do not play like this anymore. And there's a few logical reasons why. And we can pull up the board here, and we can really show you guys why that is. So right off the bat, we're already noticing a massive structure issue when it comes to high-level Rocket League. Now, at the end of the day, M80 were able to win in Swiss, but as we can see against G2, it wasn't necessarily the freest of wins. At the end of the day, M80, you do have to acknowledge, M80 individually are all fantastic players. In fact, I'm not even gonna look at the replays. We can put down as a strength one of the best mechanically in the world. Like, we can put this down for all three of the players, without a doubt. Like, that's something we can put in for all three of the players right off the bat. And that individual skill can carry them to wins. In fact, we actually have a real example of individual skill carrying a team to a win. And again, we're going to be looking at that team Season 8. This time we're going to be looking at Season 8, RLCS Season 8 Vitality. And of course, if you guys are ever interested, feel free. I believe all the replays are available on ball chasing. But we can see that Vitality with this old system individually, when they weren't performing, don't let this third place fool you. If you look at Vitality, let me set the scene for you all with Vitality with this old style of rotation. Vitality right here. If Vitality lose this match, if Vitality lose this Game 5 overtime, if Vitality loses Game 5 overtime, they go to the promotion relegation tournament and have no chance of making the World Championship. If they win this Game 5, they get third in Europe. And TSM was in that exact same situation. If TSM won this Game 5, TSM would have been third and would have been right here. And Vitality would have been in the promo relegation. So as you can see, when Vitality individually weren't performing, They were one goal away from promo relegation, but once they qualified, they managed to individually step up. They made it all that they got second in the European final, and then they made it to the World Championship and managed to get all the way to top 8, only losing to NRG in both the winners final up here and then losing to NRG in the grand final right here. And they were very close games as well. It's a very real life example of how individual skill can carry when you're still rotating fairly against the times. But I haven't explained to you guys why this old style of rotation is not really used anymore. So here's kind of a long story short. So the opponents are going to be our yellow here, and our blue team, we're going to go into that old style of rotation. So the point of this style of rotation is to make sure there's always a passing option and always an ability to cover a 50 option. Another way to think about it is some players think of it as always somebody covering worst case and somebody covering best case. And don't get me wrong, at the time when the individual players in Rocket League during Dignitas's run and when Vitality were doing well, the individual players in Rocket League just weren't as good as you would think. The only players that were really able to match up to Vitality skill-wise really was just NRG individually. And even then, Turbo Pulso is always a question mark when it comes to mechanics, but obviously they still managed to win even with Turbo, right? So why is this bad? Well, it's something that we talked about before. And when it comes to high level Rocket, we have to understand what are we trying to accomplish. We're trying to accomplish winning. And that's what we're all trying to find. How can we win as consistently as possible? That's what every pro team is trying to find the answer to. And in order to figure out how to win, we got to find, okay, what's an answer to how to win that has no objections? Well, you got to score more goals than the other team. You got to get more goals than the other team. So now the question becomes, how do you maximize scoring more goals than the other team? You got to maximize pressure. And that's the concept that a lot of old styles of rotation fail to accomplish. When it comes to high level Rocket, you want to maximize pressure. And what is pressure? It's our ability to take and maintain space on the opponent's end of the field to maximize shots and maximize goals. So with that in mind, why does this style of rotation not allow for maximal pressure? And here is why. So when it comes to high level Rocket League, you want to make sure that you're able to cover as much space on the field. So that's the first thing we're going to look for. What are the spheres of influence of the players in this style of rotation? So of course the person on the ball, he has the whole field to use. So his sphere of influence is still going to be pretty big, no matter what. This is the one thing that doesn't change from rotation to rotation. The person with the ball is going to be the person that still has a massive sphere of influence. But the players' spheres of influences that we want to look at is our second man and our third man. So in this situation, our second man, of course, he's available for a pass. But for example, if our teammate loses a 50-50, our second man is going to be useless in that situation. Effectively, two people get beat with one 50-50. So that's one issue right off the bat. You can't cover 50-50. Now, what he is useful for is of course, the pass, either a 50 pass to him or anything like that. But then you're probably wondering, okay, well, look, maybe he can go for a demo. And this is another concept that a lot of teams have understood at this point, the understanding of flow. The reason why that a second man we don't want going for a demo in this situation is due to an idea in Rocket League known as team flow. Now, don't get me wrong. If there's only one person back and you're in a 2v1, go for a demo. That's obvious, of course, right? But why is going for a demo in this situation pretty poor? Well, it's because it's going against the flow of the rotation. So think about it like this. Both teams have a flow that naturally oppose each other because both teams want to push the ball towards each other's nets. So think about it like, so normally in a Rocket League rotation, we have 3 people in our flow and 3 in other flow. So at that point, assuming our rotations are clean and close, at that point, it's just who individually is better that will end up getting the win in this type of situation. But what happens when our second man goes for a demo in this situation? We go against the flow. So we'll have 4 players going in this direction and 2 going in this direction. And just think about it from a logical perspective. Where do you think that ball is going to end up going, assuming everybody in the field individually executes the same? The ball is going to go to the other side of the field. And this is something we actually noticed in strength. If you remember looking at the old NRG, why did NRG lose to BDS? Team flow. Team rotation. NRG, the way they rotated, whenever they would run out of boost, they would rotate to the corners and funnel back to their net. So half the time when NRG were rotating, they would have all 6 players in the field facing the NRG net. Now, when NRG were the 3 best individual players in the world, It didn't matter. NRG just were able to make the save and then start the counterattack. Their offensive flow is all right. It's just their defensive flow was the thing that ended up hurting them the most. So when they finally played against a team like BDS or Team Queso, who had the mechanical skill to match NRG, but had better rotations and flow on top of that, NRG didn't stand a chance. Now against Queso, they actually did pretty well. They still went to Game 5, but BDS, they destroyed NRG, frankly, in that first fall, in that first major. And welcome, Sith. Welcome to the stream. But going into M80, as we can see here at this rotation, they use this very old style of rotation. Whoa. Here we go. Where they have somebody always available for a pass and someone always behind. And in this situation, due to the whole team flow idea, our second man can't go for a demo. At the end of the day, going for a demo like this, one, it's 4 people in this flow, 2 in this flow, which is already, as we talked about, is already poor. But it's just also easier to avoid demos in this situation, which is also, you're not going to be as effective as a player going for a demo in this situation against the other team. But lastly, going through the rotation in this situation will slow down our teammates. And the reason why we don't want to, and the reason why we have flow to begin with is to maximize momentum of our teammates. Because in Rocket League, individual momentum is very, very important. Momentum allows us to have a far bigger sphere of influence, but if we have a teammate that rotates in front of us that slows down the rotation, that also shortens the amount of the pitch that we can actually cover. And that's what happens when we have somebody rotating in the flow like this. So, looks like I was clearing the wrong board, but here we go. So that's why in this situation, unless there's only one person back, there's no, like, he can't really go for a demo either. So in terms of maximizing individual spheres of influence, our first man, his sphere of influence is still big, but our second man is genuinely only useful if he receives a pass. If a 50 happens, if a solo play happens, he's not going to be useful to the play. And that's going to be one major issue with this old style of rotation. And then you're probably wondering, okay, then what about this guy? Well, the third man, he's playing behind, playing just for the 50-50. So the third man is the same issue with the second man, as where he's only useful if he's covering the third man position, or covering the 50-50. So we see this issue where we're not really giving, we don't have much, we're not covering much of the field, which means that since we're not taking space, we're not taking opportunities on the offensive end of the field, we're not maximizing pressure. And as we talked about, we want to maximize pressure because this maximizes shots, which maximizes goals, which maximizes our chance at winning. But in this style of rotation, we end up failing to have that type of idea. So, what's the fix? Normally, we see a Rocket League rotation where we have somebody who's always supporting, and we have somebody who's trying to apply off-ball pressure. So here is what most rotation styles look like nowadays. It kind of has a base looking somewhat like this, where you can kind of understand Rocket League like this, where you always have second man who's able to cover all options. Now, why does second man start from behind? From behind, you can see the entire pitch. So imagine your second man. You see your teammate has the ball, and you see the midfield's open. You can choose to go mid to give your teammate that option for a pass mid. Let's say you see your teammate is going to go get a beat over the first man. You can also play the beat on the first man, and you just fill in first when you take the ball there. But also, let's say you go mid, and you see your teammate's going to take a 50-50. You can also go behind and cover the 50. And we can see all of support is covered by this one player and his ability to read the play. Yeah, I'm going to go play with IRLs. I'm alert, though. Thank you so much, Sith. Have fun with your friends, and thank you for coming out to the stream. But overall, we can see in this one situation, our second man is able to cover all of support. So this overall maximizes, of course, the person on the ball still, but it maximizes our second man because our second man is going to be covering all of support. And this allows our third man to cover everything off the ball. If we have the person on the ball and someone supporting, we have somebody covering everything off the ball as well, which means that if we look at it from a pure space taking, we are covering so much more of the field as a team, and this is what maximizing pressure really is. And this third man role as well is going to really maximize our ability to take and maintain pressure as well, because we're going to be trying to force our opponents out of the position they most want to be in. You don't actually have to get a boost steal or get a demo in order to play off-ball pressure. You can just rotate through, which forces them off the line they want to be on. And then you can also be a blindside pass after you rotate through, which they have to be worried about. Again, another version of pressure by presence. And then if you see your teammates aren't going to pass it into that, you can rotate out and keep the flow of the rotation going. This is what the ideal highest level Rocket League rotations look like. This is what Luminosity is doing really well right now. This is what last season G2, Falcons, Gen G, and Complexity, they were all doing it amazingly last season. And then a couple seasons ago, G2 and BDS were the only teams that were rotating somewhat close to this and doing it somewhat well. Now, other teams did rotate somewhat close to this. It's just they had other issues that kind of hurt their ability to rotate as a team. And we can see right off the bat here with M80, they're doing this old style of rotation, which doesn't allow maximal pressure. So what this does is it requires M80 to individually have to execute so much more. So that's why if M80 do not go into every game with full confidence, what's going to end up happening is their execution is going to drop off significantly as they get more and more nervous. And in this style of rotation, it requires you to be perfect since you're not maximizing pressure. The whole new style of rocket rotation acknowledges that human beings aren't perfect while still trying to maximize pressure. So that's why this style of rotation, since it's a constant flow of somebody applying off ball pressure, somebody on the ball, and somebody supporting the person on the ball, since we're covering a ton of the field and trying to make sure that each of these positions are always filled in with maximum momentum, this allows us to get shot after shot after shot and the players are still required to execute at some point. It's just if the players are in position, the mechanical execution necessary to win is far lower than the old style of Rocket League rotation. And that's why. Why did Dynasty Dignitas lose? NRG, Cloud9, excuse me, were a team that managed to, were individually good enough to beat out Dignitas and were actually rotating somewhat close to this at the time. It wasn't perfect by any means, but it was still somewhat close. And then why did Vitality lose to NRG? NRG were better individually, but also NRG did not follow the old style of rotation. They generally had somebody trying to move throughout the field, and they didn't really use their third man as a demo player, but they used him more so as a passing option a majority of the time. And that's still a version of off-ball pressure. Our car is still here. So it's not perfect, but they were still doing it, and individually they out-executed Vitality as well. So that's why looking at this M80 roster, yeah, individually are they all good, but they're not maximizing their individual usefulness. Instead, they're being put in a rotational system that doesn't maximize pressure. So what that means is M80 individually are going to all have to execute just to make sure they can keep it close with these top teams, let alone destroy them. And that's the massive difference here with this old style of rotation. Their rotational system doesn't maximize pressure. It doesn't make it as easy as possible on the individuals. Like, no matter what rotational system you do, individually they're going to have to execute. But the massive difference here between M80 style rotating and everyone else's is they're going to have to execute 10 times more often and 10 times more consistently than any other team, because that's what this rotational system requires. It requires perfect individual skills. At the end of the day, you can understand the logic. Like, yeah, I mean, always have somebody available for a pass, always have somebody for a drop down pass. Makes sense. But then when we think about the flow of the rotation and trying to maximize pressure, that's when it all drops off. Maximizing shots and pressure is what's going to give us the highest chance at scoring. Us trying to get a perfect play every single time to score is just not going to work. Against G2 and Gen G and Swiss, these players individually all executed well enough to where they were able to outplay them and win. But when it came down to quarterfinals where they've played against G2, Shopify, OG, Cloud9, when it came down to when the pressure was really on and individually these players didn't execute up to par, the rotational system wasn't able to make it easier on them to maximize pressure to still find a way at winning. It's something that all commentators try to tell you about the best teams. The best teams in the world always try to find a way to win no matter how they're feeling. That's the part about the best teams in the world. They try to find a way to win. But, so, after that whole tirade, what can we take away from this? So that means right off the bat, we have to put a team weakness for M80. M80 use a very old style of structuring their rotation, structuring their positions and rotations, which forces the players to, which requires, would probably be a better word, requires the players to have to individually execute better than the opponents to be able to score, make saves on defense, and apply pressure. This means that if the players get nervous and the individual skill drops, they are in a rotational system that will harm their ability. They're in a rotational system that will not be able to bail them out. Not be able to bail them out. And that's that means if their individual skill drops, they're in a rotational system that will not be able to bail them out, and that's a massive issue. The old style of rotation does not allow the team to maximize pressure from a team standpoint. And that's going to be something that we're going to be looking at with M80 throughout all these series, I assume. I didn't really expect the M80's playstyle to really look as old as it does. I've seen so many different names for this. I've heard people say, I'm not saying that necessarily this is what Gregan or Verge taught, but people called it the Gregan rotation. They've called it Verge's rotation. They've called it the Dignitas rotations. I've even heard some people say the Vitality V. And those are all different names that are all used for this old style of rotation, but as you can probably tell by the names, they're a very old style of rotation. And as we can see, individual drops are in a rotational system that will not be able to bail them out. The old style rotation does not allow the team to maximize pressure from a team standpoint and requires huge amounts of individual execution. Yeah, so it doesn't maximize pressure, and it doesn't maximize individual execution. So I think this makes sense. M80 is a very old style of structuring their positions and rotations, which requires the players to individually execute better than their opponents to be able to score, make saves on defense, and apply pressure. This means that if the players get nervous and the skill individually drops, they are in a rotational system that will not be able to bail them out. And at a minimum, apply pressure. Old style rotation does not allow the team from a team standpoint, does not and requires huge individual execution. Other teams have rotational systems that require less individual execution for far more pressure as a team, which makes it far easier for teams to still win, even if they feel the pressure of nerves. There we go. I think that's a good one. Honestly, that's probably going to be the one main team thing that we really put down for M80. But we're only 4 seconds into the replay, and we've already noticed that, and we're going to actually let this play continue. And we can see AJ and Jorius in one beat. Like, this is one of the things that we were talking about, just from talking about it from an analytical standpoint, without even looking at the replay. AJ gets beat by Atomic, and look at this. 2 players get beat with 1 stone. And in this situation, Nas manages to stay alive, and we can see the players do end up rotating out, and they manage to survive this one. But as we can see, if Beast Mode has a bit more boost, he probably takes a faster possession on the ground rather than trying to set up a play off the backboard. And then we can see another situation. Look at this right here. Again, we can see this style of rotation. They fit into person on the ball, person instantly going mid, and then somebody going behind. We can see there was no real flow to this rotation. It's just Nas got the ball, and then everybody started pushing up the field. Very similar to even older styles of Rocket League, funnily enough. Where if you guys didn't watch RLCS seasons 1 and 2, this is what offense and defense kind of looked like. As soon as the other team got the ball, everybody just pushed to the other end of the field, and everyone on their side of the team rotated back. And as soon as the other team got the ball, then it was just everybody turned around and then did the exact same thing. It kind of looks like that from M80, funnily enough, in this very specific situation. But we can see that if Nas gets beat here, again, it's like AJ's getting beat. And I'm not putting this on the individual skill. Like, I've watched pre-plays of Jorius before. And he's somebody who's really good at reading the play. But we can see they're being forced into a structure where they're forced to wait for a pass that, frankly, is more than likely never going to come. Now, in this situation, let's see if Nas does end up getting the pass out. Now, and look at that. 2 players would have gotten beat there. It's just luckily for us, G2 didn't execute on their challenge well enough. So Atomic gets the ball, but we can see a beast mode messes up his support here. So AJ is barely able to get back to the ball here in time to get a good 50-50, but that should have been an insta counterattack beating 2 players again from G2. It's just this time G2's individual execution wasn't what it needed to be. So we're already seeing a lot of team issues from M80, which honestly I didn't really expect that much going into it. All right, now that we've talked about the team stuff, now that we know, and trust me, everybody, my brain's probably going to continue to look at the structure and probably think, oh boy, what the heck are they doing throughout all these replays? And I'll probably point it out just a little bit more. But now that we've talked about it so much, we're probably going to be focusing a little bit more on the individual side of things. So, Jorius, he's on low boost here. He tries to put in a spot where he can follow. He does end up forcing, so the fact that he's going with a hesitation is still good. And we can see AJ. He ends up filling in support behind Jorius. He goes for the force, and he is forcing high, so that part's good. But we can see the support is supporting very far away. M80 are a team where if they played against a team like Gentlemates, where, let me acquire that. Let me clear that real quick. Where Gentlemates, they're a team that emphasizes supporting as close as possible. It doesn't matter if it's a 50-50. Doesn't matter if it's a pass. Doesn't matter if it's a beat. M80 are a team that ensures that not M80. Gentlemates are a team that supports no matter the situation here. So we can see that just due to the nature of the rotations, we can see that there's nobody on M80 that really supports the first man close. It requires the first man to get a really good beat or a perfect pass or a perfect force in order for them to get the ball. In general, just because of how far away the players support. So if M80 were to play against a team like Gentlemates, I'm calling it right now. I think it's a 4-0 for Gentlemates at this point. Assume Gentlemates execute. And even if M80 individually execute perfectly, Gentlemates are individually good enough to where they should still win that match at the end of the day. So this would be a situation where, again, we see that rotational system is hindering the ability, and honestly, it doesn't even have a really good support understanding of support in general, let alone the team structure. Because we can see right here, Jorius gets beat, and we can see an instant, and we can see AJ1 hesitates to go up. But even look at this. AJ goes up, and if AJ didn't lose a really good 50 here as he gets demoed, then Nas wouldn't have gotten this ball. It would have been another situation where then Nas would have been taking a turn, challenging for the ball. Let's see how Nas handles possession here. You can see Nas is very individually smart here. He takes the possession really well. He's on 30 boost. He goes around the boost, gets the 50-50. But as we can see, since he doesn't lose the 50 perfectly, that lack of a very close support. Honestly, I think AJ may have just spawned here. Oh yeah, so AJ misreads the 50 here right out the spawn, so that did kind of make it kind of awkward. But what I'm going to be looking for is Jorius, because until AJ spawns, he should be supporting Nas here. So yeah, we can see Jorius. Even before AJ spawned, he wasn't really supporting Nas close. So what this means is that G2, assuming Daniel takes possession here, Jorius isn't able to challenge. Then if Daniel loses the 50-50, assuming G2 has a closer support in the situation, he's also going to be getting beat. And sup, area? How you doing, homie? Welcome to the stream. How you doing? But yeah, we can see more and more of these situations where, again, we got to put down a weakness from Gentlemates. In general, not Gentlemates, M80 have a very far away support man. This means doing good. How about you? I'm doing pretty good. Got some sleep in. Got a sleep in today, so I'm doing fairly well. In general, M80 have a very far away support man. This means that if another team understands the necessity of a close of a close support role, M80 will get beat to the ball every single time if M80's first man does not execute perfectly. As you guys can see, I mean, this is getting towards G1 last season levels of weaknesses in terms of team issues. But the one thing that we do, I mean, at the end of the day, no matter what, as many weaknesses as we are seeing here from M80, especially when it comes to the team side of things, the one thing that we do have to admit is individually the players are really, really good, and they do force decently well. I'm gonna have the stream open while in the Wolves VC. Sounds good, homie. Thank you so much for coming into the stream. Here we go. We can see again. Look how far away the support. It's almost like Jorius is expecting a teammate to already be mid almost in the situation since Jorius is behind. But look how far away the support role is. AJ is going for the ball. AJ is doing all this work right now, and yet where are Jorius and Nas? I know I said I would stop harping on the team structure. We already know it's poor. It's just like, it annoys me from the perspective of the players. Like, AJ is doing all this work in the situation. He's taking possession. He's going up the wall. He beats beast mode. He gets the reset. And then he does a really, like, what would normally be a good force right here. Like, after he does all this work, he would normally get a good force. And assuming that somebody's supporting him, this is a free 50 or whoever's supposed to be supporting AJ. But since we see that nobody's supporting M80 close, we're in a situation, look, now, and so AJ's challenge, all the work that AJ just did was made useless. Right here. Remember, this is in a series where M80 win. This is in a series where M80 win. And we're seeing all these issues. Now, the only thing going for M80 is, look, AJ is the only one challenging. Look, AJ is the only one challenging, and yet he's executing. He actually took the ball, puts it in an awkward spot for G2, and they managed to almost get a scoring situation out of it. But it was all created by one guy. You can't expect one player to be scoring against 3 players in Rocket League consistently. Even if you look at team vitality, Zen always has a support player. That's why Vitality are so threatening. Their rotations aren't perfect, but Vitality are so threatening because no matter if Zen is the person with the ball or he's the one supporting, there's always a close connection between a very close support role and the ball guy with possession. They're always very, very close, and that's where the pressure comes from. So yes, Zen sometimes might be able to 1v3 the offense, but he always has a close support. That's what makes Zen so threatening. If it was just Zen, all 3 players on the other team could easily deal with Zen if it was just him. But since he has that close support role, that's what makes Vitality so threatening, especially with a mechanical player like Zen. Now imagine if you got a player like AJ and you actually gave AJ close support. That would make, honestly, that might make AJ almost as good as Zen. Now, Zen has other stuff that makes him really good, like his ability to read the play, his off-ball pressure is also really good, his goaltending is also a good part when it comes to Zen, so that is something that would still make Zen a better player. But in terms of offense, AJ is not being maximized here. And even going back to Optic last season, Optic also had issues with not supporting AJ properly. They tried to emphasize AJ so much that they didn't really end up helping him last season. That would be another issue when it comes to, like, AJ hasn't been on a team since maybe Kronovi, since he was with Kronovi, where he's at a team where they actually somewhat supported him well. And if we remember, the 2 times that AJ made top 4 at Worlds was with FaZe, with First Killer and Mist, where individually those players are just so good. How do they not make top 4? And then outside of that, you got Season 7 Worlds, where AJ, Wonder, and Kronovi make top 4. But Kronovi and Wonder just individually were not as up to par as they probably needed to be at that point. But now, let's look at how do M80 get a goal here. That's what we do have to analyze. So let's see. So Nas ends up getting the ball, so we'll switch over to his screen. So Nas, he ends up passing the ball up the field. So here we actually see a use of somebody always being mid for a pass. That's the one strength this old style of rotation has, is you can assume that somebody's always mid for a pass. So you don't have to guess where your support role is, or you don't have to assume your second man's reading you. You know they're always mid. That's the one benefit of this old style of rotation, and I'm not going to be stingy with it. I will put down a strength. The style of rotation they do use allows the team to always know someone is available for a pass. And this was the old logic they used to use when teams in the past used to use this old style of rotation. They would always know someone's mid for a pass that they can use. So that is a strength that we can put down. I'm the best player in the world. I'm him. Psych, I am the best. That's crazy. But here we go. So we can see in this situation, and again, it wasn't even a close support here. Look at how much Jorius does to make the opponents awkward with one touch. And that's something that we do have to put down as a strength for Jorius. Look at Jorius' recognition of being able to play with speed and power. Like, this will make the opponents awkward. It's a touch that will force them to be awkward. So it's a great recognition of where the open space is. Jorius recognized that all of G2 were pushed really far upfield. So a hard touch to the backboard is going to require a lot more individual execution out of G2. So that's something we're going to put down as a strength for Jorius. Fantastic at knowing where the open space on the pitch is and putting the ball in the most awkward spot for his opponents. That's something we're going to put as a strength. So it's a really good first man role. Overall, fantastic at the first man role. Great at getting team possession. And great at using team possession. Something we got to put down for Jorius. And we can see, even though Nas doesn't support well, here, look how far away Nas is support-wise. Even though he's so far away from supporting, Nas reads where the ball's going, and he puts the ball in the open part of the net. So overall, that was also really solid. And here we go. We can see another situation. I mean, like, and don't get me wrong, because of the poor rotational system that M80 end up using, we can see that the individual players are really good. Like, look how nobody is supporting Jorius here. And yet Jorius loses pretty much a perfect 50 so that Nas is going to get to the first person to the ball. That requires a lot of skill from Jorius. And at the end of the day, it's probably not what Jorius initially want to do. Like, here, he takes possession, but then we can see Atomic is challenging, right? So Jorius puts it in a spot where it forces a very high touch from Atomic, where it's going to be really easy for Nas to be able to get to the ball first. We can kind of see it's something that people tend to understand from martial arts, where you try to use your opponent's strength against them, right? And there's probably some Sun Tzu quote that I don't know that also says something similar. But hey, you use your opponent's strengths against them. So right here, Jorius, he takes possession, and he uses the fact that Atomic is going really fast. So all Jorius has to do is put the ball in a spot that will slow down the ball just enough where it's not just going to go straight into his net, but still keep the speed to make sure that when Atomic challenges this, the first person on the ball will be Nas. And we can see in this situation a really great 50-50 from Nas. So another great set of understanding of how 50s work and how to set up teammates for balls. And we also see some awful pressure as well. And that's something team-wise that we do have to put down as a strength. The team does understand the importance of trying to get off-ball pressure on both offense and defense. This ensures that when the team does apply it, they are getting the benefits of more space to apply or relieve pressure. But something we have to talk about is, since they do have this old style of rotation, it doesn't, the times where we can see the players actually be able to apply off-ball pressure is very, very low. Like we can see in this situation, Jorius does end up going for the bump in this situation. Like he does go for a bump on Daniel here, which allows them to get the goal. But as you can see, it's one of those situations where it's what, like we talked about, where the person who's mid for a pass can go for a demo if there's only one person back. And look, this is actually the exact situation we talked about on the board here. When is the only time this style of rotation could have this person going for a demo? Only when there's only one person back and it won't hurt the flow of the rotation, right? So we actually see in this instance the one time you can go for a demo here from M80. And so they do take the opportunity when given it to them. So they do have an emphasis on off-ball pressure. It's just their style of rotation doesn't allow them to consistently have it, which hurts their ability to maintain pressure for long periods of time. You can see another great challenge. And that's something that we do have to put down for M80 for the individual side of all the players. Fantastic at forcing and challenging in the air. That's something that we put down for all the players as well. Your top 50 and 2s. That's cap. That's cap. If it's not cap, then I guess I'll be proven wrong. Here we go. We can see another great challenge. But yeah, I mean, like, and that's the sad thing. Like, the execution, the individual skill of M80 is so good, but they're being stifled by the rotational system they're in. They don't have an emphasis on supporting close. They don't have an emphasis on off-ball pressure. Nothing M80 are doing from the team perspective is helping the players. Right now, we have 3 amazing individual players, and the system they're put in makes it, I guess, easier to know where each other are, but it doesn't maximize pressure, and that's the thing that's going to hurt them as they get more and more nervous. As their individual execution drops off a little bit with nerves, they're in a rotational system that still doesn't allow them to maximize pressure. But as we can see, when they are focusing, when they are doing their job execution-wise, they are able to win, and that's something that we can acknowledge. When the players are executing, they can still win despite their rotational issues. How did Jorius not score here? Unless I just misread the play. Hold up. Jorius takes possession. Okay, that should have been a goal. And AJ own goals. Let's go. What the heck is this? So Jorius rushes his play here. AJ rushes back. Nas gets beat by Daniel. And then, yeah, that's just a messed up pre-flip. Not really anything we can talk about there. So here we can see AJ, a little reactionary on that one. Didn't look like he read the play all too well in that situation. Okay, manages to get the read on the save though. That's pretty solid. That's one thing we haven't really been able to look at, is their ability to read the play. See how well they are doing that. Jorius fantastically reads the play here. I mean, look at this from Jorius. So individually wise, look at his ability to read the play. He reads not only the touch, but he keeps in mind where the players are. Right here, he reads the ball's going to the backboard, and then he also knows the player's falling up for the double tap and saves his flip. Like, that's reading the play ability that not a lot of other players have. So, one of the best in the world when it comes to reading the play at a time. But as we already talked about, even Jori's abilities to read the play isn't really maximized. Because this style of rotation, it requires you to be available for the pass no matter what. So let's say Jorius reads that AJ is going to lose the 50 back, or reads that AJ is going to solo play. Orias is limited by the rotation to stay here, and he can't go for demos, as reasons we already talked about, and somebody's already here, so he can't go play the 50-50, so he's just stuck here waiting for a pass that will never come. Which means he'll be useless for a good amount of the game. So now let's head over to AJ. Let's see how well AJ is at reading the play. So it looks like AJ isn't one of the best at reading the play here. Like, we can see a couple situations where he doesn't read what he doesn't even know what his teammates are doing, let alone what the opponents are doing. And we can see he goes for the boost here. Does he read Atomic's touch? Here he does read the touch. So it's not that AJ's the worst at reading the play, but he's definitely not the best either. So I'm not going to put it down as a weakness or a strength for AJ. Like, he knows somewhat how to read the play. It's just he's not perfect at it by any means, but he's also not the worst at it. He does force high, so they do understand the importance of forcing a high. But I think that's a strength we can put down for... I know we don't have a lot of team strengths for M80, but M80 do have a very dynamic playstyle. They go for solo plays, pass plays, and demo plays. Overall, this change up in what they go for makes them harder to predict. So overall, it is a strength. Like, we can see M80 do have a decent amount of strength. And then the M80 are only losing to teams that have a chance at making the major at the end of the day. But at the end of the day, they're still not perfect. And let me do a small little intermission. Gotta check my Discord real quick, see if there's anything important that I got messaged about. Looks like not. Okay, so let's continue. But yeah, so I'm not really seeing a weakness from any of these players, really. They're all individually fantastic. And I think that really goes to show, like, look at the strengths that we have for these players. And now look at the weaknesses. Like, I think, like, yes, technically analysis is subjective. Technically logic even can be subjective. And so that's the one part about this that, like, people can, like, especially people who have not coached before, that might have a harder time understanding, or people who haven't done analysis before. It's like, at the end of the day, analysis is a little subjective. It is, even logic can be subjective from time to time, if people don't understand the math behind certain logic. But at the end of the day, we're seeing so many examples of the rotational system hurting M80, to where here's where I'm going to leave it to you guys, in which I'm going to say, yeah, M80 are winning here, but that's just because individually all the players are fantastic. Now, one player we haven't really, we're going to stay on for the last part of this replay is going to be Nas. Go a little bit further back as well. Yeah, I mean, just like, if none of these players really have any big weaknesses or significant weaknesses individually, then what's causing them to lose? What's causing them to score it on or fail? Because we can see here, like, M80, they go up 3-0 in this game, and yet they're very close to getting tied up here in this game 5. M80 lose this, I mean, M80 go to game 5, I assume G2 win this, then M80 wouldn't have had the perfect Swiss they got. You can see M80 filling into their structure. A great challenge from Dorias, but we do see a little hesitation from Nas here. Right here, a little bit of a misread. This is a harder read, so we are going to stay on Nas a little bit longer, just to see, like, maybe this is just a hard read. Kind of like with AJ, where AJ isn't the best at reading, but he's also not the worst. So that's a great challenge there from Nas. Yeah, I think Nas might have an issue with reading the play ahead of time. At least when it comes to multiple players. Because look how much he's turning around and everything like that. We can see that he's moving his car so much, he has no idea really where the ball is going to go. We can see he's playing very, very reactionary. And luckily he's very similar to Atao. Because Atao is also really bad at reading the play. But Atao makes up for it with his mechanics and individual skill and even his reaction time. we can see Nass is a very similar player in that from that perspective. All right, so the only real individual weakness we have here is with Nass. Nass tends to react to the play rather than reading it ahead of time. This means that if he is trying to beat, that means that players who do know how to read the play or support closer than him will more often will beat Nass to the ball every single time. And the reasoning behind this is in Rocket League, everybody mechanically is the same speed. That's something that we do have to keep in mind. Everyone in Rocket League is mechanically the same speed. And like a bronze that knows that a double jump aerial is the same speed as a pro. Of course, the biggest difference there is a bronze is going to miss the ball even if he knows that a double jump aerial, right? He might not know where to position or anything like that. A pro does. So when it comes to pros, how do you beat players to balls? Well, there's two things. You either, there's two things that you got to do. One, you got to either read the play ahead of time, which as we can see with Nass, he doesn't read the play ahead of time, or you got to be able to support close, facing the play, which M80 as a team do not do. So Nass is also being put in a situation where, even though he does know how to read the play, he's also being hindered because he's not supporting close either. So Nass's one individual weakness is multiplied by the way that M80 play as a team as well. And I don't mean to be bashing on M80, but at the end of the day, there's a reason why they're losing in every single quarterfinal when the pressure's on. Like, they got amazing individual players. But it doesn't matter. And look, they have pretty much no weaknesses as players for the most part. If anything, if we had a third category that said kind of like not a strength or a weakness but needs to be better, we would just put reading the play for AJ, just needs to be better. That would be the only thing that we end up putting out. But look at these weaknesses from M80. Also, in terms of kickoffs, does not have any does not have, what's my wording in my document real quick? What is it? Variance of kickoff strategy. Does not have a massive variance in kickoff strategy, which means some teams can do far more off of a kickoff without the game ever going to normal play. Whether that be goals, possession, etc. But there we go. So, a lot of weaknesses from M80. So now that we have pretty much all the notes filled out, let's look at what we can do now. I just got spammed with 50 million messages. Oh, I think Fizzy's in chat. I think it's your group chat. But all right, let's look at the Gentlemates versus Gen G. Because Gen G also weren't performing the best, haven't been performing best in Swiss stage the last two events. Let's look at the 4-2. And then we'll end off looking at C9 versus Gen G. Because now that we've done all the note-taking, because some people don't understand this idea, but when it comes down to high-level Rocket League, or just mastering in general, like if you've already mastered something, you're not going to forget how to do it just because you're nervous. Like, that's just not how the game... That's just not how the game's... that's just not how the human body works. If you've mastered something, you're never going to forget how to do it. Like, even if you get more nervous, you're still going to execute if you've mastered something. But what that means is that if you haven't mastered something, it means that if you get nervous, you're going to mess up on it more and more as you get more and more nervous. So, for example, if we can see here with like Ness, who doesn't know how to read the play, his weakness with reading the play is only going to be more and more prevalent as the game goes on. And then M80, since they have so many team weaknesses, as the team gets more and more nervous, those team weaknesses are going to compound more and more as the team moves further and further in the bracket. But we can see here there is an emphasis on challenging early. That is, I guess, that's one strength that we did miss a little bit. So we are going to put that down for M80. M80 do understand the importance of challenging fast and not giving time and space to opponents. That part's good. Now, technically, M80 do get scored on here, but this is an individual execution thing here. Like, right here, AJ, he forces, but it wasn't a really good force. And we can see Jory's here, he just ends up getting demoed out by Chronic. And we can see, if we look how far, I mean, actually, Jory's actually supports pretty well here, but yeah, then he ends up getting beat. It wasn't the best force from AJ, so it was overall kind of more of an outplay from Genji, but then there is still stuff more the players could have done there in that situation. So I'm gonna head over to Nas here for the next part of the play. So, great possession here from Nas. That is another strength that we're gonna put down for them as well. The team does understand the necessity of possession. Does understand the necessity of possession. Not really much more I can put than that. So overall, we're kind of refining, like now that we've talked so much about the weaknesses of the team, we are trying to refine what are the strengths. They do understand the necessity of possession. They're very good at possession. But they do not understand the necessity of supporting close. They do understand off-ball pressure. They're just not doing it. They're just not, like, the rotational system doesn't allow them to apply off-ball pressure as much as they would be wanting. Great read there from AJ. But yeah, we can see even in this game right here, we can see kind of that individual skill of M80 is what's allowing them to stay in this game. And we can see that here they actually outplay Genji mechanically. And that makes sense, right? If you were to match up all the players mechanically, you would probably say that first killer / Chronic match up really well with AJ and Jorius mechanically, right? And then it would just become a question of, okay, who is more mechanical, Appjack or Nas? And at which point I would say Nas is better individually than Appjack for the most part. So that's why, from a mechanical standpoint, assuming M80 execute, they should beat Genji. But for example, if we compare G2 to M80, then G2 has M80 beat just a little bit in terms of individual skill. Just because I would put Atomic far above Nas in terms of individual skill. But we can see right here, Nas, he ends up going up for the ball, tries to set up a play, ends up going out to AJ, and he does go for the bump. And we do see support there from Jorius. His ability to read the play allows him to cut in a little bit. And we do see the team, I mean, I think the players understand the necessity of flow, but there's no team concept that really sets it up. So I'm not going to put it as a strength or a weakness, really, for M80. Ass gets back here, gets a pretty good read, takes possession. So M80 are playing with a lot of confidence right now, so they're honestly looking pretty good. Ooh, boy. That ability to read the play kind of hurt Nas here in this situation. Right here, we can see the ball gets popped up. We can see First Killer is losing the 50 to Appjack. You see that ball's clearly on target. Yeah, that's on target Nass every day of the week. Not much we can say about that. In fact, yeah, at the end they read in the play is like one of the significant weaknesses that we put down. But now, I mean, outside of that, I mean, we got the strengths of the players for the most part. I guess the one thing we haven't really looked at is boost management and momentum management. It looks overall like Nass is pretty good at momentum management and boost management. I mean, I was just expected. He's a top ones player. His pathing is pretty good as well. So it looks like that's going to be a strength that we can put down for Nass. And solid when it comes to maintaining individual momentum and boost. So solid when it comes to maintaining individual momentum and boost. So that's overall really solid. The only thing that we can do also solid at pathing to where he wants to go in a good fashion. That's something that we can put down for Nass as one of his strengths as well. As you can see, we're not really seeing too much in terms of strengths for Nass. Like, his strength, like, when it comes to individual skill, a lot of it's talking about what they, mechanically, are they really good and solid? They're very creative. Mechanically, one of the best mechanically and creatively in the world. So that's something we can put as well. That's something we can put for all the players as well. I think I'm going to add that on to all of them. Best mechanically and creatively in the world. That's one bad part about adding stuff in after the fact. Notepad, I gotta reset it for reset everything. Here we go. But alright, okay, so that's solid, and then I'm going to put that for AJ as well. AJ is going to be a little bit easier to fix since he already has very minimal strengths, but he also has very minimal weaknesses as well. To be fair, the strength that AJ does have mechanically, Jorius does have mechanically, is crazy. We're going to head over now to AJ. Oh, that's one thing that we were going to look at. His boost, his momentum, boost, and management, and pathing. That's one thing we got to look at with AJ, based on what we saw from the stats right there. Looks like he's really good at maintaining momentum, but his pathing and boost conservation, that's what's a big issue here for AJ. So I'm going to say... hey, Terror, how you doing, homie? Welcome to the stream. Here we go. Weaknesses. So, weakness, AJ is not where he needs to be with maintaining boost and pathing. So, with boost management and pathing. But he is solid at, is very solid at maintaining momentum in differing situations. How you doing, Tara? Welcome to the stream. Yeah, we can see his pathing isn't necessarily the best. His momentum is fine, but I think the issues with momentum we are seeing comes more so down to their structure again. But we can see AJ is using a ton of boost. Like, he's on 20 boost here, and he was just applying uphill pressure here. Like, that's poor use of boost and pathing. Overall, I mean, this is the game that M80 do end up winning, and again, I think that's the big takeaway. Like, what's the biggest takeaway for M80? Individually, they're three of the best players in the world. but the style of rotation they do requires perfect execution, and overall, and doesn't maximize pressure. So that's why M80 lose when everything's on the line. Just made an editing debut on the main channel. Sounds good, homie. Send it over. Really solid goal here from AJ. Lastly, we're going to look at Joria's, see how well he's doing with the boost management side. Classic AJ goal. Yep, classic AJ goal. Hey, Joria's. He looks like he's pretty solid when it comes to boost pathing. As I say that, but he's just rotating out. Okay. Yeah, it looks like his management of boost is pretty solid. His momentum management's also okay. But I wouldn't say it's a strength. I am noticing weaknesses. The only thing I'd put as a strength is his boost management. Is all I'd really say. Is great at boost management when executing certain jobs. Alright, so looking at the notes, M80 are the team that is the weakest team I've ever analyzed. M80 have beaten G1. And if you guys don't know, when I analyzed G1, when it came down to individual skill and team skill, they were the weakest team. So don't get me wrong, G1 are still the weakest overall team I've ever analyzed, but in terms of just looking at the team concepts, M80 are the worst team I've looked at when it comes to team concepts. And everyone's probably like, look, why don't you just kind of just do the analysis without stating your opinion? I'm going to state my opinion. At the end of the day, like, you have to know why this analysis works. So you guys can take your own opinions from whatever I'm saying. But at the end of the day, I think we've sufficiently shown why M80's concepts, from a team standpoint, they don't have any logical backing, but they also don't really have any results backing at the same time. But alright. So now we get to look at the final thing we're going to look at. We looked at G2 and we looked at 2 matches where M80 won. So I've been very, very kind when it comes to analyzing M80 here in today's deep dive analysis. We looked at 2 matches where they won. They beat G2 and they beat Genji. We just looked at 2 replays and we're seeing the exact same issues throughout both those replays. So that means that when we get to the quarterfinals, the nerves are going to be more on for M80, especially because they'll probably have that mental block that they've never won in a quarterfinal. And since they have that mental block that they've never won in a quarterfinal as well, that means that any weakness that M80 has is going to be maximized. And so we're going to be seeing the team issues really get put on here for M80 when we look at this next quarterfinal match. But being nervous also will minimize our individual strengths. And they do have a lot of individual strengths. So what we'll probably see is the players themselves look solid. We're probably going to see AJ, Joria's, and Ness all look okay. But it's going to be the team strategy that ends up making M80 not able to win. But here we go. Let's go to single elimination stage, day number 4. M80 versus C9. And we'll probably we're going to look at a loss now. We're going to look at game 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here we go. See, right off the bat, Cloud9 actually have a good amount of pressure. Cloud9 have fixed a lot of their issues from the previous event where they lost to Snowmen in the quarterfinal. That's an uncharacteristic miss from AJ. Only one time, though, so it's not like we're going to say that he's bad and off of just that one play. You can see there is an emphasis on maintaining possession and challenging early. There we go. Someone's already up. But we're seeing that style of rotation kind of starting to harm. And look at how little pressure Look at how much they're not able to relieve this pressure right off the bat. That's how Cloud9 ends up scoring. Look, because right here, we've talked about it before. A high-level rotation. Always want somebody on the ball. Ooh. Always want somebody on the ball. Want someone supporting and someone applying that off-ball pressure. But due to the way that M80 rotate, we lose that off-ball pressure role, and we also don't have somebody supporting as close as they need to be. So we're not seeing good support, and we're not seeing good off-ball pressure. And that's what's allowing Cloud9 to stay on offense here from a team perspective. Because right now, individually, M80 aren't going to be playing as well as they did in the Swiss stage due to those nerves, right? So let's let the play continue here. And look at that. No one was supporting Nas here close, and nobody was watching the midfield really well or looking for demos trying to apply pressure. Since nobody's trying to create space to take back, nobody's supporting close. We only have the person on the ball. That requires whoever's on the ball to execute perfectly. And if you're expecting your players to execute perfectly in every single play, frankly, you will get scored on by a team that just frankly applies more pressure. We can see here, AJ and Joria's, they do manage to execute for a little bit here. They manage to get save after save after save. But look at the constant pressure, and that's what allows Cloud9 to get the goal here. And that's why Cloud9 are losing here in this quarterfinal. If we're seeing it now, we're going to be seeing it the entire match. This is not stuff that you can fix in one match. Rocket League is such a mechanical game, it's such a fast-paced game that sure, you can make sure to remind your teammates to mentally be in the right spot, to put in the practice, to focus on what they need to work on. But at the end of the day, if you haven't gotten something into your subconscious, you're not going to be able to perfect it mid-match. That's because of how mechanical and fast-paced Rocket League is. So, don't get me wrong. Nick and his analyst JC Hammer, they might be very, very solid coaches. They might be able to keep the mental in place. But at the end of the day, if the structure itself is going to hurt us that much, you can't fix that mid-match. At the end of the day, if you could fix all a team's issues with one speech, the best coaches in the world will be the best public speakers at the end of the day. Here we go. We do see, when we finally see, we see some situations where the M80 kind of fall out of the rotational system they want to be in, and they kind of fall into the higher level rotation that we want to normally see. Like here, Joria's as a third man, lands in front of the ball. So instead of seeing M80 fall into their style of rotation, where somebody's instantly mid and instantly behind, we see a situation where we have somebody covering all the support from behind, which is Joria, somebody on the ball, and somebody going upfield to apply off-ball pressure. AJ wasn't intentionally doing that, but he kind of just landed here. And we can see that AJ becomes an off-ball pressure pass. This is a one-time situation where it actually works out significantly well for M80 because they land into what we're normally expecting from a high-level team rotation. He receives that pass, he passes it mid to the support role, and look at that. A fantastic counter-attack play from M80. But, as we'll see, they don't keep that high level of rotation. They go right back into, presumably what they've been practicing, that old style of Rocket League rotation, where we have someone instantly going mid, and somebody instantly going behind. And for those of you guys who are new to the stream, feel free to watch the VOD afterwards and go back. I went on a huge tirade talking about the old style of Rocket League rotation and how Rocket League rotation should be done logically nowadays. I essentially completely tore into the old style rotation. So anybody who's on the stream, you guys want, you can check the VOD afterwards and really check and check it out. But yeah, I mean, M80, they're individually, they're like, that's the thing, like, looking at M80, like, if you're looking at, like, we've been watching AJ this whole time. Good boy. We've been watching AJ this whole time, but if we look at any of the players individually, they're all doing great still. But since they're not individually executing perfectly, the rotational system is what's allowing Cloud9 to relieve pressure so much better, and allowing Cloud9 to maintain pressure on offense so much longer. And honestly, it's sad. Like, I'm thinking from the players' perspectives. It's just they're in a rotational system that doesn't maximize their individual skill, but also from a team standpoint doesn't maximize pressure. like no matter like it's hurting them both individually and as a team, and I think that's the thing that saddens me the most right now. Now, at the end of the day, like players don't necessarily understand the best way to play Rocket League. A lot of the time, players kind of guess and check their way through. They notice new things and try to practice it. Sometimes coaches try to instill their own mindset and how Rocket League should be played and should be understood. But as we can see, like right now, the only replays M80 would have in terms of another team doing their style of rotation, they'd have to go all the way back to Season 8 Vitality, Season 7 Vitality, and then Dynasty Dignitas. They'd have to go that far back in order to get replays of teams that are playing the way they are currently rotating right now. And at that point, that's when you would have to question, why don't teams rotate like that anymore? And we've already talked about it a good bit, why teams don't rotate like that anymore. But overall, that's why M80 are losing. It's not because of an individual skill issue. And as you can see, it doesn't even look like the players are nervous. It's just purely a team issue with this right now. Purely a team issue. It's none of the players' faults. And who knows? It might not even be the coach. It could be just a collective team effort where everybody has bought into a system or understanding of the game that's just very, very old. Because on the surface, it might make sense, but since nobody has tried to logically prove their own system to be false, it ends up hurting them. At the end of the day, like this is something that as a coach, I always try to emphasize. If you are trying to get into coaching, always try to prove your own thoughts wrong. Even mid deep dive analysis, I'm constantly trying to prove myself wrong. There's been times in my deep dive analysis where I've noticed something where I'm like, okay, in this situation, this is how this should be understood. And like I'm always learning as a coach, but you always have to have that mindset that you could be wrong, and that's going to be the emphasis that I want. That if you're ever want to get into coaching or analysis, you got to make sure you understand. If you don't have the idea that you could be wrong, or you don't always try to constantly prove yourself wrong, then you'll stop developing as a coach and as an analyst. And I'm going to tell you guys right now, I'm not perfect, but at least I'd like to think throughout this entire deep dive analysis, every point I've made, I have fully explained. I've given you guys the logic behind it. And at that point, it's up to you whether you guys want to listen to what I have to say, listen to my logic, and overall, see if you agree with what I'm saying. But for the most part, M80 right now, I don't know if it's the players, I don't know if it's the staff, but right now, the whole team looks to be bought into a very old style of rotation in Rocket League that just frankly is not done anymore for a variety of reasons. And we've already gone over those reasons for the most part, but the long story short is this old style of rotation requires individual execution to be almost perfect, but also it doesn't maximize pressure. Those two issues alone make this old style rotation something that isn't done anymore. So overall, what's my rating of M80? I like to, at the end, after my analysis, I like to compare teams that I have analyzed. So let's go here. So let's say Carmine Core. Would M80 be able to beat Carmine Core? If M80 play individually perfectly, they could beat Carmine Core. So what I'm saying here is, in a tournament situation, Carmine Core are going to beat M80 every single time. So G2, G2 and Gen G have both lost to M80 in Swiss. So yes, when M80 are able to individually execute, M80 are able to win. But in important matches, like for example, round 5 of Swiss, excuse me, in an elimination match in Swiss, in a single elimination tournament, M80 are not beating G2. Furia rotationally are sound and individually are able to keep up with M80. Furia are winning that. The old complexity roster, M80 are probably winning just because of individually CR and Dorito are horrible at reading the play. But I would say CR and M80 would probably be a very close match, in my opinion. And then Pioneers, M80 individually are going to outplay Pioneers. Could Pioneers team-wise maybe keep up? Maybe. But that would be it. And then Gentlemates, I've already talked about it. I think Gentlemates would sweep a team like M80. I think Gentlemates wouldn't sweep a team like G2 or Furia or anything like that, but just due to the weaknesses and strengths of both teams, just the support role in general of Gentlemates is going to outplay what's the word? Is going to outplay M80. I just realized. There we go. There we go. Now it's works. Okay. I just realized it wasn't showing the full notes. But there we go. Thank you everybody showing up. Just want to shout out thank you to all of my most recent follows. Thank you to Sniper and apparently this guy named Pro Boys. I mean, he was actually talking in the chat, so I don't think he's a bot. But either way, he followed me twice, I guess. But thank you to Airstrikes. Thank you to Torn. Thank you to Bora. Thank you to Christian, Rockstar, everybody with the most recent follows. We can see Terror's follow down here 12 days ago. Thank you as well, Terror. But I hope overall you guys all enjoyed the deep dive analysis. If anyone has want to in chat, I can answer some questions. But for those of you guys on YouTube, thank you so much everybody for watching on YouTube. I know it's a long video as all my deep dive analysis are, but thank you so much for watching, and I'll see all of you guys hopefully in my next video. Peace.